Right, so I have 3 questions for you. Number 1, do you feel there is a decline in pollinator species populations?
Yes, I do. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. I think if you talk to anybody who knows anything about insects, anybody knows anything about beekeeping or bees or any other pollinators will tell you that there is a serious decline in the insect population generally. There's a lot of evidence to support that. And just purely anecdotally, from my own point of view, I remember as a child being driven in a car in the middle of the summer and insects constantly hitting the windscreen of the car. We don't see that anymore. There's no doubt about it. There is a serious decline in the numbers of insects.
Thank you. Question number 2. In what way does this affect the balance of pollinator species?
Well, it's actually not just the pollinators, but if we look at the pollinators as a starting point, you have to consider what the pollinators are. There are all sorts of insects that help to pollinate. You need to go back a little bit further and ask, well, why does it matter? Well, it matters because obviously an awful lot of plants rely on pollination to procreate. In terms of our own food supply, it's estimated, for example, that about a third of everything we eat would not be available without bees, for example. Pollination is hugely important for the environment, as well as for us in terms of a food. But also, you've got to consider that insects also make up food for lots of other things, birds and bats and other things as well. So it's not only the impact within the, if you like, the insect community or the pollinator community, but it all impacts on other things as well, which depend on them for various things, including their own food. So there's an enormous impact across the spectrum, really.
Oh, thank you. And last question, how do you feel this affects the food chain?
Sorry, how does that... Say again, please.
How do you feel this affects the food chain?
Basically what you said there.
The future.
Food
chain.
Oh, the food chain. Oh, apologies. Well, yes, again, it's another good question. As I say, in terms of the food chain, so far as we're concerned, if you take bees, for example, I'm a beekeeper, so I can speak as a beekeeper, and I can tell you that they play a very important, as I say, environmental role. They're a major pollinator in ecosystems like ours that contain flowering plants. In terms of the food chain, as I say, I've already explained what happens to other creatures if there's a decline in insects and pollinators. From our own point of view, in excess of 80% of wildflowers and 84% of cultivated crops need insect pollination in order to reproduce. So obviously, if we suddenly had no bees or no pollinating insects, there would be huge food shortages at a time when the human race requires more food, not less, because there are too many of us, and that's possibly another question, but that's a fundamental problem in itself. So on the one hand, you've got an increasing population of human beings and a declining population of pollinating insects, which actually help to provide us with food. So the fact that they are declining is a serious problem for the human race, never mind everything else, but for us as a race and the ability to feed ourselves, it is and it's going to become an even more serious problem unless we get to grips with it.
Well, thank you very much for your time today. It was lovely talking to you. Have a nice night.
My pleasure. Nice to talk to you as well. Very best of luck.